All right, I'm going to show you guys two different ways that you can approach these structural sketches. One of them is starting with a predefined structure. So I've just grabbed a student's structure drawing and I'm going to wing it off of that. You can do that. You can go back and get your own structure drawing sketches and use those, or you can make a new one. Pretty much any set of shapes, like you could just put a big S on the paper, whatever. Like you could, anything that kind of gets you started with a composition could be helpful in this phase. But I'm going to use this one, and I haven't even really thought about this, but right out the gate, the thing that's most interesting to me is this little just shape sticking out here. I forget what that's probably a crutch or something, but I'm going to forget what that is. And then the other thing that stands out to me is like that shape there. And and then maybe this here. What I'm starting to see immediately as I do that is like this thing starts to look like maybe a building. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and use those lines. There's something here. And then I can kind of use that as like a vanishing point. So actually that becomes like a horizon line and a vanishing point. And this is pretty much just like a structural equivalent of taking your scribbles and imagining something in it. You're just looking at the structure and using that as a framework. Now, right now I've been paying attention to shapes and things like that, but I could also just say, oh, this is like, there's something here, there's a point there. I could make that a character's head and then have someone standing here looking at the ruins, and their feet are kind of on a hill and they're scratching their head. I'm just making stuff up as I go. And now, like, I'm going to ignore some of the structure too. Like, okay, well, that wasn't there before, but that's where I needed to go to make the picture. And then maybe there's another building back there. And then I can start going from there and just adding whatever I need. So that's one way to get going. What you should be doing though, once you get to this point, is start using like, okay, this lines up here and it goes across. I'm going to work real hard to make sure that that's actually lined up with that in my final drawing. Here I'm going to take this vertical or this diagonal, and I'm going to check it against this and notice that they touch right at that point there. That's good. That means that that diagonal is a good diagonal that kind of structurally touches something else in the drawing. Even though I'm not going to leave that line on there, the viewer's never going to see it. I know now for myself that there's a connection between there. And if I want to reinforce that connection, maybe, I have someone else in the background that's jumping and their head's on that line. Or maybe that line comes up here and that's something up there. The more you can make things connect, the better. So that's one way of going about it. The other way of going about it that I tend to use more often, especially if I have an idea already, like let's just say I'm going to make up some character real quick. And here, notice I'm going back to gesture drawing. So I've got a character that's kind of just running. I don't know why I've got a character that's running, but there we go. I've got a character that's running. Now I don't really know what the rest of the picture is going to be, but I can start taking some of those lines. I'll go ahead and do this in a lighter color so you can see it. And this is something I personally do a lot in my drawings these days. I'll take these lines, structural lines, and derive them from the part of the drawing I know I want. I know I want the figure. And then I'll just do some structure drawing stuff and see how those lines play out over the course of the drawing. Oh, having a little trouble with my line tool here. What happened? Okay, and immediately you notice I have like now a couple almost like vanishing points where I have these lines kind of headed together. Oh, I'm going to extend those the other way. And I have just all this series of structure now. I'll go ahead and put one for there. And then I'm going to set my let's just go ahead and set a picture plane real quick. Oops. Now within my picture plane, all of these lines that are derived just from the figure itself, and I could keep deriving more if I need to, right? Any angle in this body could be turned into a series of lines. Now I kind of have, like I did in the other one, I have a structure to start imagining things in that's already like synced up to the figure in the drawing. And I can go and use this to help like line up the figure more. Like I'm noticing right here that, let me get back to black. So even when I do this, I can start to put in the background, but I've also seen that there's like a connection between the bottom of the arm and the back of the leg. So I'm going to purposely like push this leg forward a little bit more. That way that calf muscle lines up right on the back. And I can keep doing that for all kinds of things, like putting the leg up, making sure that that goes up to the shoulder. But then as I go out to the rest of the picture, say I wanted to put another figure in there, I've got some lines that I could already pre-use. So maybe I don't want everything to line up, but maybe I'm going to keep this line here, and now we have another figure that's like, the head's kind of on the center of that line. That's the middle of their chest. I don't need to follow every line on there. The arm's not going to fit the way I want it. I'll just make a new line, and then that can turn into a new set. And now all of a sudden I've got like a soccer game, right? And then this guy, okay, now his leg is like kicking forward along that line. The other one maybe comes back, oh, cool, right to that point, and then I can have his foot over there. So you can see how some of those structural lines, and that's the middle of his face, I can put the eyes and the mouth. That's the middle of that character's face. Those will help me make a composition. And I could put, that doesn't have to be things that line up either. That could just be on that point where that character is. There's just like the referee standing off to the side, kind of bored, just watching. But he lines up to that point where everything comes together. And then, maybe also we reinforce that by putting like the line, instead of following this line. Well, actually, no, let's go ahead and follow this line. We'll go ahead and follow this line straight across, make it more dynamic. That's now the stands. And we could put, like there's a flag over here, an advertisement, and then there's a bunch of people up in the stands. So you can see how all of that, I didn't plan for any of that. I didn't know what I was doing, but once I've extended those structural lines out from the sketch that's already there, the pose that's already there, then I can do what I was doing on the first example, kind of like the scribble to imagination, and make things up. And then, go back through your sketch and use structural looking to keep tightening things up so that as many things don't like touch, but they line up on these imaginary lines as possible. So that's what I'm asking for this assignment. Just combine a lot of the different ideas that we've been using to make your compositions feel more stable and coherent. When everything kind of had these implied lines lining them up, everything's going to feel more purposeful than if you don't do that. And usually your eye kind of will find those things anyways. You just need to go, you'll kind of do it on accident most of the times. You just need to spend a few minutes looking at your sketches and seeing where you're getting close, and then just making things actually line up instead of being close. So that's what we're doing with this one. Have fun with it.